When we think about prophecy, our minds usually jump to the future, right? But what if some prophecies aren't about what's going to happen, but are actually a super detailed record of the past, just hidden in plain sight? Today, we're diving into a pretty radical reinterpretation of a vision from the prophet Zechariah that does exactly that. And trust me, it turns a centuries-old mystery completely on its head. So right at the heart of this whole thing is a really strange vision, a golden lampstand being fueled by two olive trees. When Zechariah asks, "Hey, what's going on here?" the answer he gets is, well, it's maddeningly cryptic. He's just told they are the two anointed ones. And that one little phrase has kicked off centuries of debate. What does that even mean? And more importantly, who are they? And that's it, right? That's the core question, the big enigma we're trying to solve. For thousands of years, people have guessed they were symbols, for institutions or nations or some abstract spiritual idea. But what if the answer is way more direct and way more human than that? Okay, so to even begin to crack this ancient puzzle open, we need a new key. And that key comes from a really fascinating way of looking at these texts called impact theology. It offers up a completely different method for reading these prophecies, one that pretty much shifts your entire perspective. Impact theology basically has one foundational role, and it's a big one. It throws out all symbolism. The argument is that these prophecies aren't clever allegories about things to come. No, they are concrete, literal accounts of things that have already happened, written down by the prophet as they were watching it all unfold. And this is the core principle, the total paradigm shift. Nothing represents, everything is. What that means is we stop asking, what does this olive tree symbolize? And we start asking, what historical reality does this olive tree describe? It's a huge change in how you approach the text. So let's look at the difference here, side by side. The traditional, symbolic way might say the olive trees are things like the church, or big ideas like law and grace. But impact theology says, nope, we're looking for real people, actual historical events, tangible things that people did. We're basically moving from the world of abstract ideas into the world of concrete history. All right, so this is where it gets really interesting. What happens when you take this key, this literal, historical method, and you apply it to Zechariah's vision? Well, all of a sudden, the identities of those two mysterious figures, the two anointed ones, they just snap right into focus. According to this framework, the first of the two anointed ones, the first olive tree, is a historical person we all know, Mary, the mother of Jesus. And the second one, Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. So this whole interpretation argues that the anointed ones aren't big institutions or ideas. They are these two very specific, very real historical women. But why them? I mean, what's the connection? Well, think back to Zechariah's vision. The olive trees are literally fueling the lampstand. They're providing the oil that keeps the light burning. This framework argues that's exactly what Mary and Elizabeth did in a very real sense. Mary physically and spiritually sustained Jesus, who's called the light of the world. And Elizabeth did the exact same thing for John the Baptist, the guy who came to announce that light. They didn't represent being sustainers, they literally were the sustainers. But hold on, it goes even deeper. The theory argues their role as these prophetic witnesses wasn't just a single event. It actually unfolded in two totally distinct phases. And the details of these phases, it claims, are laid out for us in another prophetic book, the book of Revelation. You see this very specific number, 1,260 days, which is about 3.5 years, pop up twice in Revelation. Impact theology says, hey, that's not just a repetition for emphasis, it's actually describing two separate, back-to-back periods in the lives of Mary and Elizabeth. So, what are these two phases? Well, the first is a phase of nurturing. This was a hidden period of 1,260 days, where the women were basically in hiding, protecting their children. This lines up with that story of the woman in the desert you see in Revelation 12. Then you get the second phase, a phase of power. This was a public period, another 1,260 days, where they come out of hiding to give their testimony. This corresponds to the two witnesses from Revelation 11. So first protection, then proclamation. So why were they hiding in the first place? It's because there was a very real, very dangerous threat. This theory identifies the dragon from Revelation not as some mystical monster, but as the paranoid and incredibly violent Herodian dynasty. Think about it. The threat was huge. You have the birth of a potential new king of the Jews coming from two incredibly powerful lineages, the priestly line of Elizabeth and the royal Davidic line of Mary. That's a direct challenge to Herod's power. Their flight into hiding wasn't symbolic. It was about pure survival. Okay, so let's bring this all full circle. Remember, Zechariah's prophecy wasn't only about 2 olive trees. The main event, the central theme, was all about the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. But what if that too wasn't about a physical building?
A really famous statement from Jesus gives us the final clue. When he says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up," the text is quick to tell us he wasn't talking about the building made of stone. He was talking about the temple of his own body. He was completely redefining what the word temple could even mean.
And this, according to this whole framework, is the ultimate fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. The grand temple that was supposed to be rebuilt, it wasn't made of stone and mortar. It was the living, breathing, resurrected body of Christ.
So let's just connect all the dots here. Zechariah's vision was about rebuilding the temple. Check. Jesus comes along and identifies his own body as that new temple. Check. So therefore, Mary and Elizabeth, the olive trees who literally sustained and fueled that body, they weren't just bystanders. They were absolutely essential instruments in the construction of this new living temple.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. If prophecies aren't actually about predicting the future, but are instead incredibly detailed records of history, well, that changes how we read everything, doesn't it? It suggests that these ancient texts we've always treated as symbolic might actually contain a literal history, hidden right there in plain sight, just waiting for us to understand it, not as what will be, but simply as what was.